Good evening, I'm Ross Barry and this is Central Coast News, Friday 5 at 5, a wrap of the main headlines this week on the coast. After a heated meeting, the Central Coast Council this week unveiled its first draft climate change policy. The policy comes after many months of community consultation, which saw 336 submissions, 5 workshops and 1,500 survey responses. The draft policy commits the Council to a place-based approach to climate adaptation and includes 6 key principles for ecologically sustainable development. It omitted earlier reference to a policy of a retreat with respect to waterfront properties. Opinion on the draft policy, however, is divided. Out of 15 councillors, only 8 voted on the policy and it was passed by a narrow margin, 5-3. John Asquith of Community Environment Network had this to say.
Look, I think it's a very good thing for the area. The council has a responsibility to look after all the citizens here, and it really is important by having a policy, they will actually start to take action to protect us all. So for example, our roads from flooding and sea level rise, the impact on beaches and so many other council facilities.
On Thursday, nurses and other healthcare workers stopped work as part of a broader industrial action seeking greater security in the wake of recent acts of physical and verbal violence against staff. The action, which did not include emergency services departments, was taken to raise awareness of increasing risks to carers and security staff at hospitals and other healthcare premises.
It's all to do with violence with staff and members of the public visiting hospitals. We've had so many incidents which have increased exponentially over the years. People getting assaulted, both physically and verbally, and we've actually had enough. And the people in the community, we just want everyone to be safe when they visit the hospital, including staff. Obviously, we're in front line.
Gosford Hospital, we had a security officer attacked with a wooden chair leg in the middle of the night and suffered injuries from that. And we also had an incident a few days ago at Wyong Mental Health where 4 health workers were injured with at least 2 security guards requiring treatment in the emergency department.
Uncertainty has increased over the future of Warrnambool Airport amidst ongoing negotiations between the New South Wales Department of Environment and Planning and Central Coast Council. Controversy remains around clearing of vegetation as part of a perceived extension of the airport in 2015. More recently, however, Council has now restricted the trimming of trees in the flight path, which airport users say will make it unusable. Amidst the controversy, the Central Coast Aero Club has received no firm response from Council to its application for a release renewal, which expires in 2021. It was also advised by Council it may have triggered what is known as the War Act, which could lead to further restrictions of aircraft movements. We spoke with the club's CEO, Andrew Smith.
Well, if the licence is not renewed, we're then more or less operating on a week-to-week basis on the airfield commercially. So we own the land that we're on, but the council owns the runway and the taxiways and the majority of the airport. Without the agreement, there's no certainty going forward. So if the council were to sell the airport, we'd lose our home overnight. So we really do need an agreement. We also desperately need some infrastructure works here on the airfield. Obviously, we look after the safety of the aircraft fleet and the important stuff, but things like buildings and whatnot are getting a little bit tired. And it's very hard for us to get any funding if there's no certainty going forward, obviously. So we're sort of sitting in limbo at the moment. The more troublesome aspect of that motion was a 200-metre buffer zone at the southern and northern approaches to the runway, which is clearly aimed at stopping trimming of tree lines. Now, the tree line to the north especially is already too high. Council used to routinely trim that to the height of the power lines. They have stopped doing that probably 15 years ago or so ago, and now they're somewhere around twice the height of the power lines. And we're getting a gradually eroding usable runway length already. If they stop the ability to trim those trees in perpetuity, the runway will disappear through underhanded means, if you like, over the short to medium term.
We're from Sydney, more specifically Box Hill, and we come up to Warrnambool, which is 102.6 k's, so that we have a quieter airfield, a nicer airspace to learn in. It's much quieter up here than it is at Bankstown, and Bankstown you spend a while waiting to take off and land, and of course, there's the Bassett Aviation College there, and you've got other students also trying to learn at the same time as you.
Last week we reported on the New South Wales State Government's approval of the controversial Wallarah 2 coal mine. The mine will be developed by a joint venture controlled by the Korean state-owned Chorus Corporation. The proposed mine, however, has raised concern over air pollution and contamination of the Central Coast water supply. A protest was held this week in the Central Coast. Alex Hergett filed this report.
Yeah, it's great to see the community spirit here today. It's extremely heartening. You hear the term disheartening a lot, but it's very heartening to see people of all different backgrounds, many of who didn't even know about what we're now calling the Central Coast coal mine. We feel like the word Wallarah has been used, or Wallarah has been used, because people often don't know where it is in the mainstream Central Coast. So it's very, very close to Wyong. It's 30 minutes from where we're standing from today here at Erina, and 20 minutes from Gosford CBD. The community needs to know about this, and it's starting to happen.
Yeah, clearly the idea of mining coal on a drinking water catchment is a pretty dumb idea. So I guess my stand is very much against this coal mine. What got me here today, every time I go to a Central Coast gathering of activists like this, it gives me huge inspiration. And it's my job to take that back to Parliament and try and reflect it the best I can, and try and give the people here a voice in that Parliament so that the government can actually hear what it is that the community really want.
We have to be writing to our local council and telling our councillors and the mayor and the council staff, do not do business with these people. Do not talk to them, because they have to do a water sharing plan, which they can only do with council, and they've got to negotiate where that water gets returned to the water catchment. They can only do that through the cooperation of council.
Very important issue. A coal mine's been trying to be dug in basically in our main water supply, so the community has to step up and take action. This just can't go ahead.
A second cane toad was discovered at Woy Woy this week. The discovery was reported at a meeting of the Coastal Open Spaces Committee. It has sparked fears of many local wildlife conservationists, with Reptile Park Director Tim Faulkner saying cane toads had caused major species decline in Australian northern states. We spoke with Jake at Australian Reptile Park.
Cane toads on the Central Coast and really from Newcastle down are quite rare, quite infrequently seen. Most of the cane toads we typically see within the Sydney area come down as hitchhikers and in fruit plantations and things like that, and fruit packaging. So they kind of stowaways from North Queensland typically. But is the potential to have these animals coming down further south as we potentially see an increase in temperature. They're very much a tropical animal, which is why they're restricted to the northern parts of the country. But if we start to see temperatures rising, we may see these further south in the country. Risk is primarily their poison. Behind the eye, behind each eye is a poison gland. And if an animal tries to consume this, which a lot of them do if they come across them because they're used to feeding on frogs, they think it's a frog, they'll try and consume that animal. And as it bites the cane toad on the head, it will begin to exude that toxin from those glands. And if they ingest that, they will most certainly die.
Thank you for watching. We hope you can join us next week for Friday's 5 at 5.